leader anyone could ever ask for. Elizabeth, please come on up.
Thank you. Well, this is certainly a gorgeous day to be in Guelph, and I'm very grateful. Of course, I'm not here to talk about the Green Party. I'm here to be, I hope, of service to Wellington Water Watchers, which is a group that you all need to join. If you haven't joined yet, you're in for a nice surprise, because when you join Wellington Water Watchers, you get a really nifty stainless steel water bottle in which you can put really good water that Nestlé never owned. This is a good thing. Now, yes, there it is, Exhibit A. My charming assistant is now demonstrating the water bottle. And this is a real saving for us. I've been an activist on environmental issues, as many of you will know. Here we are on the eve of the 37th Earth Day. First Earth Day, April 22nd, 1970. Many of you weren't born yet, but I can tell you I was in grade 10, and the news was that Lake Erie was dead, and it was caused by phosphates in our detergents. And industry tried scare tactics to make sure we wouldn't take phosphates out of detergents. They threatened us. They said, if you take phosphates out of detergents, your clothes will no longer be whiter than white. I'm serious, that was the threat that was used. Here we had an entire Great Lake, Lake Erie, threatened with eutrophication from phosphates and detergents. We managed to deal with that issue. We have, and I want to share this with young people, in the last 37 years, won far more campaigns than we've ever lost. We've changed things time and time again. We've found a better way to deal with washing our clothes, basic, to acid rain, to the ozone layer. We know what to do. And now here we have this crazy situation, which I remember distinctly the first time I saw water for sale. I was visiting a relative in California, and I was 6 years old. Whoa, we're getting feedback. Woo! I was 6 years old, and I saw water for sale in a supermarket. And I thought, these people must be crazy. Who'd buy water? Do you remember the first time you saw bottled water for sale? You thought, well, what on earth are they thinking? Who would buy water? We have perfectly good water. We're lucky in North America. Generally, we have perfectly good water out of our taps, except for if you live on a First Nations reserve, or if you happen to be in Walkerton at the time of that disaster. But our water is really a public good. Our water is a human right. And the thin end of privatization has been this mania, this fad for bottled water. Now, I will confess, I was told not to, bashing Nestlé is not the purpose of the Wellington Water Watchers, so I guess that leaves it to me. I boycotted Nestlé for so long when they insisted on pushing formula, infant formula, in developing countries. I think sure people will remember that even though the water supplies were clearly contaminated and that the only safe food for African infants was mother's milk, but in those days Nestlé kept promoting formula. Well, that was a hard campaign, and they lost a lot of ground, and eventually they had to say they were sorry and they would help promote breastfeeding because it was safer than mixing their formula with contaminated water. But they've come up with this brilliant thing since, which of course is taking the fresh water, the aquifers of the world, putting them in bottles and selling it as though it was a product. It's an extraordinary scam, and at its heart, it boggles the mind that we're prepared to pay for water. We pay more for a liter of water than we'll pay for a liter of gasoline. If the price of gas goes up, Canadian consumers say, what's going on? It's price gouging. And why is it that we seem to be prepared to go forward and buy a bottle of water? So while this consciousness-raising moment exists here in Guelph, to reject the demands for increased access to water, to reject the demands to suck Mill Creek dry, we can also look at consumer behavior and say, why would any of us ever buy bottled water? We're in a time when some of the things of the common good, some of the things that are held in common and held in trust by all of us, our commons, our global commons, but we see them being privatized bit by bit. And one of the things you can notice about our communities is as bottled water becomes more prevalent, we see water fountains disappear. There's a small little sign of change. As people have more cell phones, we'll eventually lose all our pay phones. But in the meantime, that little symbol of the water fountain, the pure, fresh water in a community that's available for anyone to step up. A little tiny child can get on the step, push the button, and get safe, pure drinking water for free. And this mania for privatization, the fact that Nestlé owns Perrier, owns San Pellegrino, owns the major water companies, and is committed globally to taking out so much water. In Ontario alone, it's 3.6 million liters of water a day from the public drinking water supply. Well, why does this matter? It matters because they're taking water out of this basin. It's an interbasin transfer that manages to fall outside the laws that we just got passed through the Great Lakes Annex. It's the loophole. It matters because this is in the public trust. There's been a really great pushback against Nestlé in Michigan, where they won in court to say they couldn't take the water because it violated the public trust doctrine, and they've managed to hold their ground there. Every community has to push back to protect the water supplies we have, because we're already seeing, and I just want to make sure I pull the right quote out from the great work that's being done by Wellington Water Watchers. From one of the reports from the Ministry of Environment for Ontario is the fact that this already, the pumping that's happening is already causing the aquifer to lose water already, and that's on the existing levels of pumping. I know I marked it here, so I would find it to read it to you. Here it is. We're already seeing groundwater flow reversed in Mill Creek, because what's happened is that in some areas, the process of pumping, the conditions switch things and put them into reverse. So it converts the stream from gaining groundwater to losing. And this expert report says there can hardly be a more profound change in groundwater flow. So we disagree with the statement that, quote, well, it's a little bit complex there. But the question of protecting the aquifer, nothing could be more important than protecting our water. We tend to think in Canada that we're a water-rich nation. And yes, we have a small population, and we're in a country that has a lot of water. But with the impacts of climate change, one of the first impacts that we will be experiencing will be threats to our quantity and quality of water. We'll see Great Lakes water levels dropping profoundly. We'll see contamination of water spreading, because as there's less water, the contamination becomes a larger proportion of the total. So we'll have problems of quality of water and quantity of water as a result of the climate crisis. We'll be seeing some areas of the country quite hard hit, particularly Alberta, where they're so much dependent on glacier melt, and the glaciers are all in retreat and disappearing. But even here in water-rich Ontario, we cannot take water for granted. We should not ever allow water to be privatized, and we must here take a stand that people will notice all around the world where Nestlé privateers show up to take their water. We can make this stand here in Guelph. So I just want to ask you to get on board with Wellington Water Watchers. There's a simple thing that everybody can do. There's an application in. The deadline for comments is now extended to May 11th. We want the Ontario government to get the largest number of comments they've ever gotten on any application, flooding into the offices of the Government of Ontario, so that they will say no to Nestlé, that they will realize that we stop here, that things that we produce from water, like, say, Sleeman's, is better than taking water for free, dressing it up in a fancy bottle, which leaches endocrine disrupting substances that promote cancer, which is another reason I'm really happy to have my own stainless steel bottle, because we never put water in plastic. We don't put our food in plastic either, but that's another longer rant, and it's very hot right now. So I'll just say that in what you're doing here, it has not just significance for Guelph and not just significance for Ontario. Every time citizens in a community take a stand against the water privateers, that victory rings out all around the world. We want a victory in Guelph. We will say no to Nestlé. Thank you.
Thank you. Please join me in thanking Elizabeth May, leader of the Green Party.